The Rockets right now, this is just going to be kind of a general Rockets talk because I'm fascinated on where they're going to go. They are 19-19. They're 6th in defense, 21st in offense. That's basically been pretty steady throughout the course of the year. Really good defense. Offense has been, let's call it hit or miss, depending on the night, right? They started great at 6-3. They've basically kind of held steady since then. They went 9-9 in their next 18 games after that, following back-to-back wins against Dallas and New Orleans. They were at 15-12. Been a bit of a struggle. They've only won 4 of their last 11 games. Those 4 wins were against the Pistons twice, the Nets, and then the good one against Milwaukee, which I think was every reason to be like, okay, maybe this team like could be a real play-in, playoff team that, wins a play-in tournament kind of situation. The losses in those 11 games: Pacers, Suns, 76ers, Wolves, Heat, Bulls, Celtics. The Celtics and Wolves games particularly were blowouts. I feel like when I watch the Rockets, I'm watching a team that I'm really excited to watch, and I'm really excited by the progress they've shown. I do want to note as well, as 57 Otis says, like Tari Eason and Dylan Brooks have missed quite a bit of time recently. They have had some lineup in and outs. No question. That's absolutely right. It does feel like a team that is still really growing and is still trying to just get it all together a little bit. And given how deep the West is, I don't know that they're going to be a play-in team, but I don't know that I care about that. I think is where I'm at, given the very clear growth in progress that they have shown over the course of this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I like, and maybe why I wasn't as high on their summer whenever they signed Fred VanVleet and they signed Dylan Brooks, is I'm like, man, these guys are going to come in and they're going to take all of the offensive role, and you're not going to find out about your young guys. Well, that's not at all what's happened. We've given Dylan Brooks some flowers for not coming in and taking a ton of shots. So what I like is, you've talked about this with the Pistons, right? They need to find out what Cade Cunningham. What I'd like is, we're finding out what Alperen Sengun is, what Jalen Green is, or what Jalen Green is not. We're finding out about Jabari and Tari Eason, and that's being helped and aided by these veterans. So I think it ended up being really good. Sengun is still first in field goal attempts. Green is second. Jabari fourth. Tari sixth. So like, you're still getting, the hierarchy is still where you would want it. And every time I watch a Rockets game, they talk about Fred VanVleet and the culture and what he brings in regard to that. We know Dylan Brooks brings a certain mentality that I think is good for these young guys in terms of competing and, a positive, confident mentality. So I think this has ended up being way more than what I thought it was going to be, because I was nervous, like, man, well, if Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks are just going to lead them in points and field goal attempts, I don't like that. That's not at all what has happened. We've seen Sengun shine. And again, maybe people are upset with what Jalen Green has been this year, but at least you're finding out, like, because it can't be, well, he doesn't have a point guard or he doesn't have a wing defender and he's having to take defensive matchups. No, they've put Jalen Green in a position to succeed. And now it's like, can he do it or can he not?
Yeah. I think that's a really, really good way to phrase it. I want to start beyond that with Sengun, because I think it's by far the most important place to start. As you mentioned, like finding things out about who you have and what you have on the team. The most important thing they found out is that Sengun is an all-star. I don't know if he's going to make the all-star game this year. He's going to make the all-star game multiple times moving forward into his career. He is a stud. He is awesome in terms of his capability of finishing around the basket. Now he is awesome as a overall playmaking hub in the center of the court. And I think that's kind of where I want to start. His ability to make plays in the center of the court, either in pocket pass situations from Fred VanVleet or entry passes, at the top of the key or at the elbow, things like that. It is the best offense that the Rockets can run. And it is absolutely ridiculously impressive that this dude that is 21 years old is able to create in this way. So I grabbed a couple of clips in terms of what I'm talking about here. So the first one here is, I just kind of want to show how well the Rockets space the court around Sengun. And I think that this is something that is totally different from like the Silas era Rockets, right? Ime's spacing has been so much clearer and smarter and crisper. And part of it is because that they have guys like Fred VanVleet, who you absolutely have to guard at all times. They have guys like Jabari Smith, who is knocking down shots from three this season. They have guys that are real offensive threats around the court, which means that it just creates oceans of space for Sengun to operate in that middle of the court area. So on this one, it's just an entry pass, right? Like it's setting up almost like a Spain pick and roll. It seems like you're coming up. Sengun's going to come up and set this screen here on Jaden Ivey, and you can see Reggie Bullock is coming up behind him to potentially do like a screen the screener on the roll situation, a Spain pick and roll action. Instead, what they decide is Alperen just gets the ball above the 3-point line, and you see Reggie Bullock vacate the area. You see Fred go away from him. It's clear that their spacing principles are just so much better this season in the way that they're thinking about basketball. And part of this is having guys like Reggie Bullock over 30, having Fred VanVleet has played more minutes in the NBA than anybody probably over the last 5 years because of the way Nick Nurse used him. So you create the situation where Alperen Sengun, if you ask him to drive, he is so fluid and capable with the ball in his hands that he is going to find a way to score or to create an open shot where you have to collapse down on him in some respect. So this one here, it's just so ridiculously impressive to see, okay, I'm just going to go spin back, get it through for a shot. And because he's capable with both his right and his left hand finishing around the basket with those little touch finishes, it's just really hard, even for somebody like Jalen Duren that has a real size advantage on him, to be able to do much of anything in this circumstance. So it's the oceans of space that they put him in, the different ways that they utilize that space. So I grabbed another one here too. This one, I just kind of attached this one because of the previous Monty Williams quote about Jaden Ivey that we didn't get to in the Pistons section. Hey, yeah, we haven't tried this guy at point guard as much. Someone on the organization like pointed that out to me. No shit, Monty. Like, come on, man. What are we doing? But like, look at Jaden's speed, like just explodes by Reggie Bullock. Just absolutely absurd in terms of his flexibility, burst, everything like that. But now we're going to get Alperen as the trailer here. They're going to set like a sweet little one, almost, what do we want to call this? Like a 1-3, given that Reggie Bullock, I think, is the 3 because I see Jalen Green in the corner there.
Yep.
So we're going to come through. We're going to set like a 1-3 ball screen here.
Get the switch.
Yep, you get the switch. And now Sengun is just operating as the trailer in oceans of space here, right? This is just fantastic offensive design, I think, where you have Sengun set like almost, I don't know, what do you want to call this? Like a veer kind of screen for Reggie. It's almost a flare maybe for Reggie to like come. Well, Reggie almost takes it as a curl, but I would assume that Reggie's going to go back to the wing 3-point line there.
Well, Jabari does a really good job, Sam. We talked about this with Jared McCain. Watch what Jabari does here. This is why relocation is so vital to me. I would be Jabari. It's not super crazy. It's just subtle. Jabari relocates to the wing and he doesn't get the ball, but by him relocating to the wing, it allows Reggie to get to the corner, because if Jabari was still in the corner, Reggie would be hanging out in the dunker spot, which what is Reggie Bullock going to do in the dunker spot? So that subtle relocation just helps with overall team spacing.
No, 100%. And honestly, it's something that I think Jabari probably wouldn't have done last year.
Sure.
Which is growth. Like, it's huge growth for this 20-year-old who's a killer shooter to be able to understand, hey, instead of Reggie taking this as a flare, he's going to curl around this action on the opposite side from Alperen. If he's going to curl around, eventually he's going to either, get this ball, rolling to the rim, or he's going to have to relocate to the corner. It's going to have to be one of the two. So I'm just going to lift. I'm going to do the easy thing. I'm going to lift here. I'm going to relocate into the open space. And again, all it does is just look at this open ocean of space for Sengun to be able to operate in.
And Jalen is doing it on the bottom as well. So Fred drove into the lane, kicks to Shingun. Jalen is on the strong side. So here after Fred, it doesn't happen super fast, but now Jalen is lifting to the wing. Fred's getting back out to the corner. And it just, and here's the other thing that should be like, you
Yep.
have Jalen Green who has gravity. You have Fred who shoots almost 40% on 8 attempts. Bullock, Jabari Smith Jr., who's at 38% on 4.5 attempts. The Pistons aren't a good defensive team, but that's really good floor spacers. You can understand why they're saying, like, we kind of have to leave Duren on an island as good as Alperen Sengun is. And here's the other thing. I've said this about Luka. Because he's such a good passer, it leaves him in isolation situations to score
Yeah.
because you don't feel like you can double him and turn him over. If they felt like they could double him and make him make a bad mistake, they would double him. But they know if you double Alperen Sengun, he's going to find the teammate that's open and he's going to hurt you that way.
Exactly right. I think they are so smart. And to me, this is Ime as much as anything. And I want to be very clear, like, they did not always do this stuff last year. Like, it was part of the really frustrating things about the Rockets. Like, this is all very simple stuff. These were young players. It was a coach that was probably not quite a head coach. You know, he's a assistant on the Pistons now. Like, everybody loves Steven Silas around the league, thinks he's a great guy. But it's these simple kind of things here where I think Ime is drilled down into them. We're going to play 5-out basketball. We're going to have good spacing. And I think you're seeing now the effects of that and how it's created a circumstance for Alperen Sengun to be able to really lift his game and become, like, genuinely a borderline all-star. Like, if he gets named to the all-star team, I'm not going to have a problem with that. He's averaging 21.7 points, 8.9 rebounds, 4.8 assists on 54% from the field. Look, I don't have a strong, like, opinion one way or another if he should make it over Chet, over Wemby. Like, these guys are unbelievable bigs across the board. And then you look, you know, Rudy Gobert is in this mix. You know, I guess Karl Towns is in this mix. Jokic will obviously be there. You know, Domantas Sabonis, I think, will probably be there. Anthony Davis will almost certainly be there. Whatever you want to do with the Pelicans guys, because I would imagine that one of Brandon Ingram or Zion will be there. It's a loaded group. Jaren Jackson Jr. is in
Lauri
the West as well.
Markkanen.
Lauri Markkanen is there. There are so many great bigs in the West. I truly have not parsed through it all. I don't know who should make the All-Star game out of all of those guys comparatively to one another.
But he's going to be on people's lists, Sam. Like, when you start to make your list, Alperen Sengun is going to be in the conversation. My vibe is he probably gets left off, but there's going to be a lot of, with all due respect to Alperen Sengun, as much as I love Alperen Sengun, those type of comments. Yeah. And, you know, maybe that's as far as it gets this year, but I think that's a huge step forward for him.
Yeah, no, it really is. It really is. And I would expect he's going to make a few of these moving forward. Jabari Smith, I think this year has been really impressive in the leap that he has taken. This is something that we expected after Summer League, where he came in and was the best player in the 2 games that he played. I thought he and Tari Eason, I thought, just completely blew the doors off the place. He's averaging 13.5 points, shooting 47-40. Or no, it's 47-38, 84 from, you know, the line, and he was averaging 9 rebounds. And, you know, the passing still isn't quite there, but everything else has just been so strong for Jabari, and they still find ways to get him the ball. Like, in mismatches, I think he's been a little bit more aggressive recently at being able to find those mismatches and play at that level. But yeah, no, just a terrific season for Jabari Smith too.
Yeah, I mean, he's 54% from 2. I like to see that in the most recent game against the Pistons. I made multiple notes about, you know, getting out in transition, offensive rebound, made a cut, did something off the bounce. You know, I always believed in Jabari's jumper. I thought it was a beautiful jumper. And, you know, going back and watching some of his shots from college, it just, I don't know that many guys have made me just go, oh my gosh, as many times as he did with some of his shot making. It was, you know, could he lower his hips and get you off the bounce and, you know, leverage that shooting ability into something more? And then I don't think the defense, he was a rookie. The defense wasn't quite what I think people thought it was going to be. And now that seems to be coming around as well. One other thing I want to say about Sengun, I have try to watch for contact balance from players more and more. I think that's super
Yeah.
valuable. We'll talk about this with the prospect. We're going to talk about the end and Jalen Tyson because I think he has this.
Yeah.
Sengun, I feel like, has really good contact balance. He is much stronger than what I gave him credit for coming into the year. And that plays out in the isolations. It plays out whenever he runs pick and roll or when he's rolling in a pick and roll. It's really important, and he really has it.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to point out about Sengun and Jabari Smith, particularly, because they end up kind of being the bigs in like ball screen actions and in primary actions pretty regularly. I think that both of those guys, and again, this is a credit to them, it's a credit to the coaching staff, Ime Udoka, everybody there. It feels like they're really locked in on what the scout is in terms of what kinds of shots they want teams to shoot. Uh, like for instance, in that Pistons game, like when Isaiah Stewart would be the person screening and Alperen would be guarding, as the big in the ball screen defense in drop. It felt like he would even do like sometimes like delayed doubles, like even after somebody like Fred VanVleet had gotten through the screen, because he was just like, you know what? Like I would much rather Isaiah Stewart take a three than, Jaden Ivey, whoever, get a chance to get a shot at the rim, get a chance to blow by in some way, shape, or form, get a mid-range jumper, etc. Right? They're good at like forcing. It feels like mid-range jumpers. They're good at. It feels like they're just really locked into what they're trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish. I think every time I watch them on defense.
And that shouldn't go undervalued because I don't think every team does that. And it's hard on an NBA schedule because you're playing back to back and all of those things and adjusting from one scheme. Not that maybe they're completely changing their scheme, but just how you're going to guard a guy. One other note I wanted to make: 53% of their points scored by players under 23. This was the highest in the NBA by far. So this goes back to how I started my thought process of I overcompensated with the like these free agent signings, like, oh, they're going for it. And it's going to be a veteran led team with those guys take. No. This is still a young team led by young talent that's getting all the chances to succeed. There's a little bit of overlap, right? We've talked about it with Cam and Tate and Tari Eason and all that. They'll work that out. They'll get it. Amin and Amin's going to take a little bit of time. But that was a very impactful stat to me that their young guys are still doing loads of their scoring. With that said, real quick shout out Jeff Green. This man is still putting in work night in, night out, has some highlight dunks. Like, shout out to him for still doing his thing at this point in his career. And I think providing some real value. Yeah, I mean, we talked about the hole at center and him having to play as a backup five, the minutes he does. But I mean, when he's been asked to do it, his 16 minutes a night, he's done an admirable job in what I've watched.
Yeah, 100%. Like he's worked really, really hard. He's been good schematically, defensively as well. It feels like he's just limited, right? Because he's 6'8", 6'9", whatever he is.
Absolutely.
Tari Eason has missed some time here recently. I love the energy and aggression that Tari Eason gives every single game that he's on the court, every single minute he's on the court. He helps them play with like attitude. It feels like to me. If he could finish at the basket, I think he would have like real all-star upside. I'm not joking when I say this. Like, I don't know if he's ever going to be able to finish at the basket well enough to actually reach that ceiling. But my God, like he is able to get to the rim. He's so aggressive attacking the offensive glass. If he could finish at the rim and then he continues along the trajectory he's on currently as a shooter, he's making 36% of his threes, almost all of them open. Again, like Pedro just brings this up, like Tari just makes good things happen all the time. That's right. His presence is infectious. He is super valuable out there. I love watching Tari Eason. Please, Tari, whatever you can do, I just beg you, learn to finish at the rim. Like, if you can do that, the game changes, I think, for him in such a substantial way. Because you then really have to like pay attention to him across the board. Regardless, he's going to be like a top. He's going to be something in the NBA. Like he's a starting quality player as soon as next season to me. And really, there's a case he is already with how he impacts the game. As long as the shooting continues to hold at 36. Fred VanVleet, we haven't talked about him a ton, but I think Fred has just been so steady and so solid. You look at the leadership as well. Like when you watch Rockets games, they show a lot of clips of, you know, this is something that we talked about last year a lot on this podcast with Adam and things. Like when I would watch the Rockets, it seemed like there was no accountability. There was no accountability. There was not the proper levels of accountability across each player. When you watch them now, it's Fred VanVleet going over, having conversations after breakdowns. It's Ime Udoka having conversations after breakdowns, trying to get guys in the right place, getting guys in the right frame of mind. Having Fred as like that on court coach, I think has been so important and valuable to them.
Yeah, culture matters, and he's been a huge part of it. The other thing is like he does it by example. He gets after it defensively. He has great hands, and he'll dive on the floor, he'll take a charge, he'll do all these things you want your young players to do, but he's not just telling them. It's not just Ime asking them to do it. He's saying, look at your veteran culture setter, Fred VanVleet. Watch him do all of these things, literally show you that he's willing to do it at this point in his. Oh, there was another one where just the epitome of I love guards that get involved in the board, Sam. Like I just love a guard that on the weak side is willing to make a rotation and get a box out or whatever. I think it was against the Cavs. He makes a weak side rotation and he gets in there and gets a old school box out on Jarrett Allen. And I'm just like, I love this. I love this about Fred VanVleet. And if Fred's willing to do it, then you know who needs to do that? Cam Whitmore. Like Cam Whitmore starts winning on the margins by doing things like that. And then the Rockets really have somebody, because you and I believe he can score the crap out of the ball. If Cam Whitmore starts making weak side rotations for box outs, now you're talking about just him adding a whole nother level of value to your team. So I think having someone that shows that Ime can take the film and say, look what Fred is doing. Watch him dive on this ball in the fourth quarter. I think that's more impactful than just him just saying it. He's able to show it from kind of the culture setter of your team.
It's 100% right. You know what the most important like statistical changes for me with the Rockets this year? Do you know what they finished last year in turnover rate offensively?
So they're top 10 this year. Let's say bottom 8.
Yeah, they finished 29th last year in turnover rate on offense.
What an improvement.
Yeah, this year they're 9th. That is the Fred VanVleet.
That's awesome.
Change. That is the Fred VanVleet. So important to have somebody who can just be that guy for you. I think who can run the show, who consistently gets everybody the ball in the spots that they need the ball. I think he's been so valuable the entire way.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Okay. We're not going to talk a lot about Cam Whitmore, Amen Thompson, and even Jalen Green. We talked a lot about them on the last episode that Bryce and I recorded, which is the Rookies podcast. I think we seriously talked about those guys for probably like 15 minutes. So if you want to listen to stuff on those guys specifically, I would say go back and listen to that episode, which I think we recorded on Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, right? Just a few days ago. Yep.